Before I get started, as always, I'm going to come on here and ask you to please, if you're listening to this message on whatever podcasting app you're currently listening to, please just give me a rating and write up a short review. Let people know what you thought of this podcast. What that does is it helps us really rise up in the charts. And when we rise up in the charts, the message gets out to more people. And then secondly, I would ask you that you hit that subscribe button. We're having more and more powerful guests on this podcast. I've been very blessed to be able to connect with some very intentional, driven people that you're going to want to hear from. And then last but not least, I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn. I get a lot of messages on Instagram and different places. People who are really appreciating the message that I put out there or my guests put out there. I love those messages and they keep me going, and God bless you for sending them to me. But beyond that, if you could just take that message, if it hit you in a special way, it's going to touch someone else's life as well. So do me a favor and, keep on sending me those messages. I love those. I like that personal connection that I have with the audience. But beyond that, can you just take a couple minutes and share it on whatever social media platforms you have? That really, is going to help get that message out and bring more and more people. But it also could be the difference in between someone's success and failing, at least in one day of their life. And it's nice to know that we have an impact. But if I'm having an impact with my message, or one of my guests has an impact with you, share that message. Do it for your friends. So anyways, let me get into it. Today's guest is someone that I've known. Well, I say that it's someone that I've known, but it's someone that I've known of. And I guess I knew him from a distance. We went to the same church, and I knew who he was for over a decade. But we never really crossed paths much. But I'm going to tell you, I wish we had. I can really tell you that the first personal encounter with Tony Ojeda that I had was when he was given a presentation, and my wife and I decided to go to this presentation at the church. And the passion and knowledge that Tony had about the subject that he was talking on, it just lit up the entire room. He was the best speaker, in my opinion, out of 8 different speakers. So let me tell you a little bit about Tony. Tony is a financial planner by day, and he's really following his father's footsteps as far as his career. But I'll tell you right now, his occupation does not define this man. His mission really defines him, and he states within that mission that his mission is to help improve the lives of others by serving them with great passion. And I'll tell you, I said that I knew Tony from a distance. I knew what he did. I knew who he was by what he did in the church. I knew who he was by how I saw his marriage show up within the church. I saw the service and passion of his family with how his whole family showed up in church. And a couple things that I don't know about, but I've heard about, is that his financial practice was really built upon this principle of serving people. And I also know that he's very passionate about this book that I have in my hand, Made2Thrive, and the content within it more so because it's how he lives his life. And he provides coaching along with those messages from that book. So I'm sure you're going to love this episode as we dive deeper into this book, Made2Thrive, where we talk about the 4 pillars of success, the 6 domains that define his vision, how to become exceptional in what you do, and many other tools that he has in this book and within the accompanying planner that he has for this book. We also discussed the relationship that Tony has with his father. And you can really read about this more in his latest book that's titled My First Hero. And that book was really started on this premise. He had the mission to share his father's life with simply his family, his siblings, his kids, his siblings' kids, that sort of thing, because his father has an exceptional story. But then it was demanded by the public. He works with a lot of people that know his father, and they were saying, "You got to publish this book. He's got an amazing story." So that's what Tony did. And you can find links to both of those books below here in the show notes. So without further ado, let's get this party started with Tony Ojeda.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in The Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
All right, welcome to the Fire Forged Leader podcast. Today we have a great man by the name of Tony Ojeda, author of a couple of great books. One book that just came out here within the last year is My First Hero, which Tony talks about his father. And we'll get into that a little bit later. The other book that I want to talk about is this book right here, which is Made2Thrive. And to me, this is a great, nice, easy read. But man, there's so much depth within these pages on how to prepare people for life, really. And there's no good book without a good planner to accompany it, right? So I also want to mention that this Made2Thrive planner is one of the best that I've ever seen because it just ties all the pieces together. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tony Ojeda, a friend and also a great author. So Tony, why don't you let us know a little bit about yourself?
Well, first thing I got to let everybody know is I probably owe you $1,000 after that introduction. So I have to take that up with you later. But I appreciate the introduction and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast. I'm a weekly listener. I don't think I've ever missed one of your episodes. And so if I'm listening to every week, it's a good podcast. That's all I got to say. But no, I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I have been happily married to my lovely wife for 29 years, Cindy, and we have 6 children. And much like you, Steve, they're kind of spread out. Our oldest is 28 and married and lives in the Twin Cities. I've got a son who's 26 and married, and our first grandchild will be born here sometime in October. And then Lindsay's 22. She works for me. I don't know if you ever watch MASH, but I compare her to Radar O'Reilly. She thinks before I even speak, and it's awesome. Sam's 19. He's going to be a sophomore at Hutchinson Community College. He's got big dreams of pitching Division I, hopefully one day. If he keeps working, we'll see if that happens. Emma's 15. She's getting ready to go to camp to be a counselor. I take her there. I think tomorrow we leave about 1 o'clock. So I'll be home alone because my wife is also gone in California for a week. So I'll be home with the youngest, Joseph, who's 7, and he's my favorite child. So I've been a financial advisor for 29 years. It actually started the day after I got back from my honeymoon. It was the last thing I ever wanted to do in my life. And we getting some life insurance on my beloved bride right before we got married. And his boss, my dad's boss, offered me a job. And I told my soon-to-be wife, said, I'm never, ever doing what my dad does. And Cindy said, I think you should give it a try. And so after our honeymoon, I tried it. 29 years later, I'm still doing it. I have done some coaching, life development, life coaching for several individuals, done strategic planning for businesses. And that's the division we created a few years ago called Made2Thrive. We're not actively pursuing that. We still have a website, although I took down the main one we were using because right now I'm the only one that's doing the coaching. And so obviously if people want that, they can contact me. I'm more than happy to visit with them about that. It's not to say I wouldn't do that with other people. But yeah, very blessed to have written 2 books. I really became kind of a leadership and personal development guru probably about 12 or 13 years when I began taking on leadership positions. My background, not just as a financial advisor, but I was a managing partner of a firm that had about 30 people. And I was an executive vice president of a firm that had about 160 people. And I wanted to learn everything I can about being very productive and being a strong leader. So that's a little bit about me anyway.
Nice, nice. So you talked about your dad. I know that you respect your dad in a phenomenal way. I also know your father. Amazing man. I probably know your father more than I know you, to
Probably.
be honest
Yeah.
with you. We were in a couple different groups together while I also lived in Lincoln. Uh, so what clicked inside of you that, your wife told you you should try it and you tried it and ended up getting sucked into that profession?
I really don't know. I'm never going to forget it. I mean, it's as vivid in my mind today as it was then, because his manager came into his office and said, "Could I talk to you for a few minutes?" And a few minutes was 2 hours. And he
Hmm.
proceeded to tell me about how great my dad is. He's helped so many people, and I would be great in this career. And the flexibility of the schedule, I'd still be able to coach cross country and track. I'd still be able to do public speaking. And although that was appealing, I'm like, no way. And honestly, I took that first step in the parking lot, and she says, "I think you ought to give it a try." And I was just blessed that my dad was there. The managers that trained me, and that was all very good about learning how to sell and how to work with people, but how to run a business, and doing the right thing and being a man of integrity and honor. My dad would always say, "You're going to struggle. It's going to be hard. You're going to be wondering how you're going to make it." And he just kept saying, "But you be consistent. You always do what's best for your clients. And if you do that, you'll be successful and you'll have everything that you want and more." And my dad didn't lie to me. So you're right. I have a great dad. He is my first hero. But without his help, I would have never made it. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So that I did read your other book, partial. I'm
Okay.
not going to lie and tell you the whole thing, but uh, I got it. I got it in my stack. Of course, I keep on reading. Uh, so, was there ever a time with your father that you just, besides the business part, that you didn't feel that way?
Yeah. I
You did.
mean, there were times. In fact, in the book, I think I say it that when I interviewed my sister and my younger brother, they both claimed that dad never yelled at them. I'm like, well, he did me. So we were sometimes at odds, but there's a real specific example. And Steve, obviously, this. I'm Catholic, but there was a time in my life where I wasn't living my faith at all. And I wasn't going to mass regularly. I might go every once in a while on a Sunday, but I wasn't going. And so here I was, probably a freshman or sophomore in college, and I hadn't gone to mass because watching NFL football all day, of course. And my dad knew I hadn't gone to mass, and I was still living at home. And I had my backpack on. I was gonna head to the library because I had a couple tests and a paper needed to get done. And as I'm walking down, we had lived in a split foyer house. I'm walking down the steps, and he caught me and he said, "Are you going to mass?" I said, for the first time, I was like, I'm just gonna let it all out right now. And I turned around and I said, Dad, no, I've got 2 tests. I got to go to the library. I got to write this paper." And he said, you really got to go to mass like right now. And I'm like, "No, Dad, I really don't." And we just started going after each other. He was standing at the top of the steps. I'm way below, and he's just looking down upon me. And I was just like, "Dad, you know what? I'm thinking about leaving the church anyway." That was totally the wrong thing to say. We had a big old 1970s console stereo that had like the little record keeper or the record player, and then it had this big box of wood. And he took his fist and he pounded his fist as hard as he could on that piece of wood. I thought for sure he broke his hand. And he said to me, "How dare you even think about leaving the church that Jesus Christ himself started?" Now I always have one that I can come back on anything. But at that moment I didn't. I turned around, I walked out the door, I slammed the door shut, I drove right to the library, and I couldn't study for 3 hours because all I could think about was what my dad said. Now, he said that in anger. And I think if he would have used that approach with my sister or brother, it would have been disastrous. But with me, it was the right approach. Now, I can't say as if I came back right away, but within less than a year, I was faithfully back in the church. And that he had a big impact on that. So sometimes, as you know, Steve, we do the best as we can as dads, right? But sometimes we screw up. And in that moment, my dad probably thought he screwed up, but he did not. It worked.
Yeah. He spoke your language, the one that you needed at that
That's right.
time.
Yep.
So the other part that I heard you say in there was you didn't use the word serve, but it was the word serve, right? Or the definition of.
Yep.
And I want to point to the planner for a minute because this really struck me in the mission statement example. There's a quote by you down here that says, "My mission is to help improve the lives of others by serving them with great passion."
That's right.
And I just want to tell you the first time that I knew who Tony Ojeda was when I was going to church, right? He was the guy always in the nice suit, sits up front, had a nice looking family. They all faced forward. I always looked at your back, right? So I knew who you were, but the first time that I ever really truly knew who you were, it was, I can't remember. There was that revival that was happening in the church and you spoke at it. I can't remember what the name was right now, but it doesn't matter. And I got to see your passion for serving people that day. So what does that quote really mean to you?
Yeah, it's something that I'm just a big believer in. Again, it's within the book Made2Thrive, and kind of what I've developed everything on is you have to have a personal mission statement. The Baltimore Catechism of the Catholic Church talks about the reason we were created was to know God, to love God, and to serve Him in this life so we can be eternally happy with Him in the next. So that's kind of a general mission of why we were all created. But I think God's called us all very specifically in a certain way to serve and to live our life. And I think if you really just think about, okay, how do I come up with that? What is my mission in life? What was I created to do? And not all missions need to be service related, but for me, it is. And I don't always live my mission. That's one of the things I review that every week. And the question is, how well did you live your mission this week? And sometimes it's crappy, but it's this constant reminder that I said that. That's why I'm in this world. It is to help improve the lives of others by serving with great passion. So I think I help improve the lives of others almost every day. I don't always do it with great passion. I can get grumpy. When things don't go my way, or, in my world, in the financial services world, compliance reviews everything. And it's just like, really? Or, when somebody doesn't process a request that we're doing for a client in a timely fashion, I get unsettled. And if I get unsettled, I get grumpy. And then I take that out, usually an email. I don't usually verbalize it. I mean, I can, but my emails can be snarky. And I just think, what am I doing? Because that's not why I was created. I've got to do this with great passion, not being grumpy. So I think everybody's got to have a mission for sure.
So just thinking through that a little bit, right? You're still serving your customers with great passion, right?
True.
Because that's why you're grumpy.
Right.
But what you're saying is you really need to expand it out to all people, regardless whether they're in compliance and red tape or not, right?
That's right. Because
okay, I get that.
Yeah, because those people, who supervise you, or somebody who's processing a request for a client, they might screw up or they might make a mistake. But if you get all angry and in their face, you might have to deal with that person later, and that's not going to help anyone.
Right. And then it'll take you away from the mission of the serving at that point, right?
There's no question about it, Will.
So jumping into the book a little bit, I got into the planner, which probably should have came second, but that mission statement hit me earlier while I was doing a little bit of a review. When I was reading your book, I really found, it says on the cover, and I want to read it here. It says 13 proven practices to help you on your journey of success. And to be honest with you, Tony, I looked at this book and I'm like, okay, 13 sounds like a lot. But then after I started looking through the book, I realized that it's really, if I was going to break it down into my own language, it's really the 4 must-dos: mission statement, vision, goals, and action steps. And then there's add-on tools or modules that you can put on top. There's and each one's broken up nicely into chapters, right? So the next one is accountability and coaching, that is like an add-on to get you to that next level. And then, of course, there's tools for business and career, the perfect week, which we're going to talk about, strengths, client relationship, staffing, delegation, those kind of things that are really particular for your career. And then another add-on that sets you over the exceptional cliff, right? You call it tips for taking you to the top.
Yep.
And that's, thank you and gratitude and be referable. So is that how you intended to write this book?
No, that's a great summary, though. I obviously, the next book I write, I'm gonna have to consult you before I publish it. So, no, I mean, I guess in a way, yes. I mean, we talk about those 4 pillars, which is the mission statement, it's the vision, it's the goals, and it's the action steps. But yeah, those are different things. So when I first started writing that book, the real intent was I was going to write this for financial advisors. That was going to be my audience. And then as I was writing it, I'm like, well, no, just about everyone could benefit, even if they're not in business, right? It could be a teacher, it could be a stay-at-home mom. And I talk a lot about this, that everybody should have a personal mission. Everybody should have a vision. And if you're going to have a vision, if you don't have goals and action steps, then forget about the vision. And, but it's got to be all encompassing. A big part of my world is my business, but it doesn't consume me. It doesn't overwhelm me, because if it did, then the other areas are going to really be suffering. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a good explanation of what it would be. The vision is so important. It's like, I remember back in the days when I was much younger and traveling with Radix, and I was always the navigator. Now, some will tell you I'm not the best navigator anymore, but back then I was a rock star. And Doug Berry and I would be driving along, and I always had the atlas, and I was the one telling Doug where to go. Right? Well, you had the map, you had the vision in front of you where you needed to go. It's the same thing in life. It doesn't matter if it's in your business, your personal life, your faith journey, whatever it might be. You have to have that vision set. And everything else really falls from the mission statement and the vision for your future.
So I 100% agree about that vision, right? I tell people often, you got to know 2 points to embark on any journey. You got to know where you're starting and where you're heading. Otherwise, you're lost.
That's right.
It's simple. I do have a little bit of a question and you're going to challenge my thought patterns a little bit on this, but the mission statement you have before the vision, right? In my world, I've always wrote the vision, and the mission statement is this, not necessarily the steps, but how I was going to apply or how I was going to map out the journey. But in your book, you put the mission statement before the vision. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So the mission is the why, and the vision is the where. And you have to understand the why. And again, it's why am I here? Why am I on the face of this earth? And when we make decisions in our life, especially big decisions, we have to look at both, because obviously if that decision is going to prevent us from achieving our vision, well, we probably shouldn't do it. But for me, it's more about my mission, because, some people say when I talk about this, I'm being sarcastic, and maybe I am, but I mean, I do have a big ego, and I can be cocky. And I had a priest friend of mine say, you really are not you're not as prideful as you think you are. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think I am. But, for me, when I get asked to do things, my initial thing is like, absolutely. Look at me. Look at this important person asking me to do something. And what I found myself doing is doing a lot of things ineffectively, because I was doing too much because of my own ego. I would be asked to serve on boards. I was asked by the governor to serve on a board, and I served on it for like 6 years, and I was miserable. It wasn't a huge time consuming thing, and it was really important work, but I sure wasn't passionate about it. I mean, the only reason I did it is because the governor asked me to do it. And I've made other decisions because of who asked me. And the most recent board I served on, I'm still serving, I think I'm 3 years in, is Cedars Youth Services. And it's a great organization. They do great, wonderful things. And Jim Blue called me. I've known Jim for a long time. And I told him on the phone, I said, you're going to have to really sell me on this. And I emailed him my personal mission statement. And so we met for like an hour and a half. And he said, Tony, I think this work falls within your mission. I'm like, well, Jim, it's my mission. I'll make the decision on that. And so I filtered it. I'm like, okay, does this work help improve the lives of others? Absolutely it does. Can I do this work with great passion? And the answer was yes. So that's why I put that first, because to me, when you make decisions, if it doesn't fall within your mission, you should never do it. You could make a decision that maybe is different from your vision, because maybe that decision now is going to alter your vision. Because whatever you've been asked to do, like, I think I want to do that now. I will change my vision for that.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I'm going to have to ponder that one for a little bit, but I like that that definition of, your vision could change, right? I mean, based off of the mission. So yeah, if you look at it from a mission first, personally, I've just kind of always looked at it as, what tools are we going to apply, right? But I like your knowing your why part of that, right? And I've always kind of used my vision as an assumption of the why.
Okay.
But I really like tying it into the mission. So
gotcha.
Yeah, thanks for challenging me on that.
Hey, it's a pleasure to challenge you.
Is that your ego talking?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, fair enough. And then we get into goals and action steps. I call them tactics, whatever, right? It's the steps that you're going to take to get there. But, everybody knows the SMART definition of goals, but you use smarter.
Yeah.
So let's take a few minutes on what that really means to you.
Yeah. So, I borrowed from Michael Hyatt. What's their name of it's not Michael Hyatt and Company anymore. It's Free to Focus, I think. And, smarter is just, like the second E there is exciting, because some people establish goals and it's not exciting, because sometimes it's somebody else's goal, right? Like, oh gosh, you got to do that. And then, another one is, I've talked about risky, or is it relevant? Is it relevant and is it risky, right? Because if it's not relevant to your state in life, then you absolutely shouldn't do it. And if you don't put some risk to the goal, then you shouldn't do it. And, I can even share this with you. One of my goals, and it's a Q4 goal, is to have, to have 10% business growth and a 10% increase in profit. And I thought that was risky. Well, I'm halfway through the year and I'm like, well, that wasn't risky at all, because we're killing it right now. But some of them are, like another one of my Q4 goals is to, contribute $15,000 to our donor advised fund, which we set up a few years ago. That is riskier, because we've got some other things that are big financial commitments that we're doing this year. And, I start scratching my head. I'm like, okay, is that going to happen? Well, I know when I start scratching my head going, is that going to happen? Then I know it's risky. And so I just like the framework of the smarter goals. And, I encourage people to utilize Michael Hyatt and Free to Focus's stuff, because their stuff is really good too. But yeah, I mean, they've got to really stretch you. The goals get you towards your vision, and it's so important. I always have goals every year, and every one of my goals is meant to drive me to whatever I said my vision was. I don't do any goal that's not going to get me closer to my vision. Otherwise, it's pointless. There might be a task or a project that I'm going to do. I'm going to help with somebody, but it's not my goal. I'm there to help people, but when it comes to my vision, my goals are established around my vision or my company's vision. I use the same process both personally and within my company.
Do you keep those two separate, or are they on the same spreadsheet, so to say?
They are separate. Obviously some of my personal goals involve the business. Again, the revenue growth or the net profit growth, that is both a personal goal and a business goal. I have to do that personally in order to do the things that we want to do as a family, right? So those coincide, but they're two different plans. I mean, I review with my team every quarter what the vision is for the company, and then I review what our objectives and our goals are, and we report on them every week where we're at.
Nice. So I have this vision in my head, right? That I guess I shouldn't use the word vision, but I got this picture going on in my head. Uh, and I use this when I'm explaining it to people, but it's like a stairway to heaven.
Mm.
For me, where I'm standing at today is the bottom of the stairs. My vision is all the way at the top of the stairs.
Yep.
And when I'm doing my daily tactics or the action steps, that's climbing me up the rise of the step. And then my objective or my goal is that run. And each one is just climbing me up there to the top of that staircase. So around your goals, I noticed in your planner, there's annual goals and then there's also quarter goals.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Sort of. So let me explain that. So you would have a total of, I was going to say three. Three would not be the right term. You'd have somewhere between 8 to 12 goals for the entire year, but broken down into quarter. So you'd have no more than 3 goals you're trying to accomplish in a quarter, but no less than 2 goals to accomplish in a quarter. Because, certain things you can get done faster. So like for me, the business goal, that's a goal for the whole year. That's where I want to be at the end of the year. I have a goal this quarter that probably is not going to happen. I've changed it. You can change goals too. Like I had a goal physically to be at 165 pounds. But I had my knee scoped about 5 weeks ago, and I haven't run since November. So my cardio is significantly different than it ever has been before. And I've been doing more strength training. I'm like, well, that ain't gonna happen. It's not like I'm much over 165, but I'm like 173 pounds, but I have more muscle. And so then I thought, well, should I change the goal then to be based on body fat? And I did. And I hate that because my body fat has increased. And I'm telling you what, I'm not going to be down to where I want to be here in a week, but it's the same, So yeah, I mean, the goals are to be, these are the things you're going to accomplish in the year, but some of you are going to accomplish in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter.
Right. So you're really taking this big ass hairy goal, as they'd be called, right?
Yep.
And you're just chopping it up into your quarters and making it reasonable.
That's right. That's right.
So now those goals, you also have 6 domains that you work on. Can you kind of walk us through those 6 domains that you build goals out for?
Yeah, I will. And, I've taken things, and again, if somebody reads Made2Thrive, they're going to see where I reference a ton of stuff in my book, from authors and speakers and, a lot of these self-help people or these personal productivity people, they have these different life domains. These are the 6 that I've settled on. So one is financial, and they don't have to be in this order, but in my planner they are. So one's financial. The second one is physical. The third is professional. The next one is personal. And then you've got your spiritual as well. Actually, I did that backwards. I actually have a spiritual and relational. So you don't have to have all those. I tell people, if you don't have a faith background and you don't have a creator, a God that you pray to, you don't have to have a spiritual life domain. Those are the 6 that I've chosen. And they're all equally important. There are years that I put more focus on the business though, because maybe when I write my vision, I look at the vision for my business or my career, my professional, I'm really far from that. There are other years that I spend more focus on the personal because maybe my relationship with the family is not as where it should be, or, one of my vision, it's I'm spending time, if still alive, they better be alive, with my parents at least 2 times a month. And, if you're not dedicated to that, you can get away from that. And, I have friends who've lost parents already. And that's the thing they say is, I wish I would have spent more time with my parents. And so, but sometimes I get away. I'm like, okay, I read that vision every week and I'm like, dang, it's been at least 2 weeks since I really saw my parents. Maybe I've talked to them on the phone a couple of times, but just spent time with them. And if I'm not doing that, I've actually established a goal in the past to do that very thing for an entire quarter, just so I was actually doing it with my parents or with my children. I'm going to spend time, one-on-one time with each of my children. So this is when I'm 60, I'm 52 now. Well, all of my children, except for the youngest, are going to be adults when I'm 60. So it takes a little bit more effort. So sometimes I've got to establish goals because I'm not doing that maybe with one of my adult children now. So those are the 6 life domains.
So one small challenge on the spiritual, right? I just had Ray Cash Care on.
I heard it was great. I loved it.
Uh, that another man with tremendous amounts of passion,
No
right?
doubt.
Uh, but anyways, I really liked his take, right, on the faith component, that if you don't have a spiritual God faith, that you can at least have faith in yourself. So you could still use that as a domain, right?
Yeah,
Even
you're right. I mean, the idea is, part of spiritual is just being a better person, and we all can work on that. And what I mean by that is not physically better. We can all work on being stronger and better shape, but being a better person who invests time, invests energy in people, in relationships. I Success can be defined a lot of different ways. Earl Nightingale said it's the progressive realization of a worthy idea. Well, part of being successful is in relationships. And, I look at my own children, especially my adult children, how effective they are with people, better than I am, the way they can invest in a relationship. And that impresses me. And so that is definitely spiritual development, because I think spiritually you want to improve who you are in relation to people, for sure.
yeah, some sort of contribution to society, right?
Yeah,
Not
yeah, that's a
all
good word.
inward focused.
That's right.
So you also have in the planner 3 daily thrive actions.
Mhm.
Does that correlate with the action steps,
Yes,
or
that
is
that i- that if I so I obviously published the planner after the book. The daily thrive actions are action steps. So, and again, those thrive actions or action steps, or as you might say, tactics, those are the things that every day you're doing something to get closer to the goal. And those are the things. So in the planner, you've got the 3 thrive actions, and sometimes I only have one. Sometimes it's 2. It's most of the time it's 3. Those are the 3 most important things you can do that day, period. And if you've got another 6 or 7 tasks that are listed below that and you don't get them done, success. You got the 3 done that were the most important. Because sometimes the other tasks that you have are somebody else's tasks. Like, I got to call this person. And, sometimes those are urgent and they're important and you should do those, but some of them can be delayed. So as long as you do the thrive actions that you have listed in your planner or your notepad or whatever it is, you've done well that day. And it's you should celebrate. That's one thing that I don't do as well. I don't celebrate the wins, and we should be celebrating our daily wins, because there'd be so many times I'd come home from work and I'm just like down, and Cindy would be like, well, tell me about your day. And I'm like, I've given her all the negatives, but then I would share a couple of the positive things. She's like, wasn't all that bad, was it?
That's awesome. I don't celebrate either. I get to the end of the quarter, I check to make sure that I met all my objectives, right?
Yep.
All right. And I use 4 domains right now.
Okay.
But anyways, I go down through and I check them off. Like, all right, what's next?
I'm the same way. And yeah, it's terrible. I mean, even like in my planner on the goals, I actually said what I'm going to do to celebrate. And what's the one? Oh, I want to pave the rest of the driveway. That's pretty dang important. I've been dying to do that. And my celebration it's celebration enough just to have it done. And that's probably pretty pathetic. That's just me not really wanting to take the time to really think about how I'm going to celebrate achieving that.
I did like how you had celebration written in the planner.
Yeah,
However, using it like that is probably a cheap cop out.
that's right. That's right. It is.
Oh, I I absolutely love that, because that's exactly what I would do. So another thing that struck me while reading your book is, right out of the gate, you say you're not one of the top performers, but you feel like you're very successful.
Mhm.
So can you kind of define what success really looks like to you?
Yeah, I mean, again, using that definition by Nightingale, it is this. It's really just a journey. And so if you have a vision for your future and every day you're getting closer to that, you are successful. In business, I don't deem success based on how much revenue or how much new business I can write. I don't ever have a desire to be honored and glorified as this top producer, this top advisor. I'm actually very uncomfortable with that. There are some people that they love that. They love being recognized. It's good to be recognized, right? But I'd rather be recognized in business by my client saying,
Mm.
Tony, I just really appreciate what you do. Like I had a client email me at 5 o'clock this morning, and I have a rule. I don't respond until it's the workday, but sometimes I will read emails. And boy, it just was on my heart. And I really wanted to reach out, and I waited until 7:45, and then I sent him an email. I just couldn't wait anymore. His wife, whose health has kind of got deteriorated, she's only 70 years old, and she's got to go into hospice.
Mm.
And she probably has less than 6 months to live. And and he had some questions, and I said, I'm available. I'll make myself available. And my day was pretty jam packed. And I said, here are the times. And I said, I'd like to visit. And he emailed back. I said, I'll just drop off what I need you to look at. Well, we talked for like 15 minutes, and his heart is he's just like, I can't believe I can't take care of my wife, and he walked out, and he said, Tony, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for letting me vent and share this with you. That's success. It's not the amount of money I make. I tell people all the time, and I kind of jokingly say it when somebody new comes into me, a new client or even an existing client, for us to open up a new account, it's a ridiculous amount of work. I mean, I remember when I first started, you'd write a new investment account, 2 pages, and you're done. Now it's like 80 pages.
Mm.
And so the temptation for me, somebody who is successful, I tell people, we generate enough revenue in my business. I can pay all the company's bills, pay Cindy and I enough income to do the things that we want to do, set enough money aside, do enough for charity, all that. I don't need to increase my business revenue. So the temptation is for me to say to myself, just don't recommend it. Because the time and effort we have to put in to open that account, I do not want to do it. And my daughter Lindsay's in most of my meetings, and she knows I feel that way. But the name of my firm is Integrity Center. And so
Mm.
I will do the right thing. And I always joke with the clients or the prospect when they come in, and I'm like, I don't want to recommend this because we got to do all this work, but this is what you need to do. And they appreciate that. So that success, being in a position where, man, the temptation is to not to do the right thing, even though you're going to make money because you are already successful. You have the business that you want, but it's really about just helping people. And it goes back to my mission. If I've lived my mission that day, it's successful. If I have helped improve somebody's life, like that gentleman today, man, that was hard for me to take the time to meet with him. And I made the decision to do that, and that's a big win for me. That's a big success for me.
I feel the same. This podcast, of course, it doesn't make anything, right? I just get to talk to really cool people,
Right.
and hopefully it'll lead, me on my vision, to open the doors to a coaching career and different things like that. And I believe it will.
I think it will too.
But right now is a big goose
Right.
egg, right? And there's times I think about throwing in the hat. It's like, I don't know. Is anybody out there really listening? Right. I get statistics and metrics and, all that kind of stuff. And, I'll hit a big spike and then I'll hit a big low, and then I'll get that one message. I just got one yesterday on LinkedIn, and it was from a person who I used to work in the same department, corporate department as, and she just, outpouring of gratitude for what I'm doing here. She's like, I'm so tired of self-help gurus who don't know what the heck they're talking about. You're bringing real life experiences out here and, what have you. And I really appreciate your message and that kind of thing. And I mean, it fuels me up for another 3 months. Right.
Yeah. And that's what you need, especially when you don't always see the light at the end of the tunnel. We go through life and there's a lot of crap we deal with, and it can be hard to get through those things. But those little nuggets that you get, it's like, okay, that's just what I needed.
For sure. For sure. So I did want to ask you a question before and I completely spaced it, but you got on this journey and I can tell you, looking back on my life, uh, I know the exact point in time when I turned from a slug to
Mm.
moving in the direction that I am now. Did you have a moment like that, or was it when your dad hit his fist and then everything changed for you? Uh, was there a turning point at all for you in your life, or were you always on this trajectory?
No, I've never been a slug. No, you know, I think for me there wasn't a big moment. For me, obviously, a couple of things happened. I mean, obviously, starting my career, and then 1 month after we get married and starting my career, we're having our first child. I had to start doing things to make life happen. I had to work hard, and I didn't work smart. I worked really, really hard. I put in a lot of hours, and I wasted a lot of hours. But just recognizing, okay, I'm responsible for people, and right now those people are my family.
Mm,
And then I guess another time would be is when I was put in leadership positions. When I became the managing partner of our firm, there was four of us who bought out the old two owners. Both of those owners stayed on. One stayed on for a short time. The other one stayed on for a while. And we decided we were going to run the company with all four of us, equal weighting. The buck stopped with all four of us. And what we found out is our employees hated that. They liked that we were all involved and we were all making decisions, but they wanted that buck to stop with someone. And I don't know if you know Larry Kiter. He's in Lincoln, just a great, great, great guy. But he helped us do a strategic plan. And as part of that, he did the 360 on all four partners. And we had to determine who was going to be the managing partner, who was going to put the buck really stop with. And I wasn't the most experienced. I had not been at the firm the longest. And we all four met with him and we were talking about it. And I just looked at him and I said, Larry, based on what you've seen, who does it need to be? And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, Tony, it's got to be you. I was like, whoa. And I looked over at one of my partners, older, been with the firm longer. And I said, how do you feel about that? He said, if Larry thinks that's who it needs to be, I support you, Tony, and you should be that person. So that moment for me was like, okay, I've started to kind of develop with leadership and start reading. This is when I became engrossed with it because now it wasn't just my family that I'm responsible for. It's these 30 people who work for me. That was probably a big moment for me.
yeah, that's an awesome story. What do you think it was that he saw in you? Did he go into that at all?
He did. I mean, I have some terrible weaknesses. I am not empathetic at all. So a leader should be empathetic, and I struggle with that. I actually work on it, so I am more empathetic. I just think that he saw my ability to encourage people, my ability to motivate people, and listen to people. Even though I'm not a real empathetic person, I can't feel what you might be feeling. I can listen to you. And I'm one of those people who I don't have all the solutions, but I can take what you might be saying to me and I can go to someone else to try to figure out a solution to be able to figure out the problem that we're trying to work on for you. I think those are some of the qualities that he saw in that.
Yeah, and I think that's big too, because I don't have a lot of empathy either. I'm like, why the hell doesn't everybody go 100 miles an hour, right? Even when I was doing stupid stuff in my life, I was still going 100 miles an
Right.
hour, right? Uh, but the more that I've learned active listening, right, the more I've learned how to ask questions. And, when you're asking questions, you might not be empathetic, but the person feels like you at least care what they have to say, right? Or
Yeah.
care about what they feel. So yeah, those are some pretty big qualities. So going back to your father a little bit,
Mhm.
switching gears, why don't we talk about this other book about Tony's first hero?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So many years ago, my dad started writing he called it his book. It was a story. And I read it a couple of times. I think all three of us kids had read it, and it was just incomplete. And it really inspired me to be like, I got to figure this out. And of course, as I said a little bit earlier, I have friends who lost their parents, and those stories die with their parents. And my dad's story is amazing. And the reason I wrote the book is not to publish it, it was to share that story with my brother, my sister, their children, my children. And that was it. The problem was, I'd meet with clients who were my dad's clients, who now he's retired, and they always want to say, "How's your dad doing?" "Oh, he's doing great." And then Lindsay would be in the meeting. "Oh, we loved your grandfather. He was so good." I'm like, "I suck, apparently." And so I'm writing the book for my family, and I would say, "Well, I'm writing a book. I'm doing this project with my oldest daughter. We're interviewing my dad and a little bit my mom." And they're like, "Oh, when are you going to publish it?" "Never." And they're like, "No, you need to publish it because we'd like to read that book." And so when I realized that more people were going to read it, I took more time and just was really, really inspired and by my dad. And I remember I was watching my nephew because of the pandemic. The state swim meet was very limited on how many people could go, but I was watching him online watch swim the state at the state swim meet, and it just hit me how I was going to start the book. And I started talking about all these different heroes I had as a kid, and then I went into my dad. But he's an amazing man. He came here to from the United States from Cuba when he was 14 years old with his younger brother. And it's hard for me because I went to this museum where I saw my dad's name and my uncle's name as they would have been written as they came to this country. But my dad shared with me that when he left Cuba, his mom said to him, "Take care of your baby brother." And when they got to the United States, within minutes, they were separated. And my dad had no idea for a couple months where his younger brother went. And my dad, I understand my dad really, really well. My uncle, who is now recently deceased, was a big risk taker. My dad wasn't. I mean, I know he had his own business, but he really limited his risk. And I understand that now. Because when he came to this country, the one thing his mom asked him to do, he couldn't even do. And but his story and the prejudices and the racism that he experienced and the level of success that my dad achieved, not just in business, but in his faith, in his family life, in his church, and his community, the things that he was asked to do. Honestly, I'm just blessed. I'm blessed by both my parents, but I'm very blessed by my dad.
So I'm not going to lie to you, Tony. Meeting your dad and then meeting you, I'm like, they're related?
You're right. Exactly. Yep.
Because you're like the Kool-Aid man, right? Busting through walls. And your dad, and of course, I've only known him later in his life.
Right.
I'm sure he's not always been this way.
That's right.
But he's the calmest, coolest person that I think I've ever seen in my life.
He is. But he get fired up. He's Cuban. He's got that Cuban blood, and believe me, that man can get fired up.
Okay, so I get to see the greatest parts then, I guess.
Right, that's right.
No, it's awesome. Tony, I want to be really cognizant of your time here. We're rolling up on 50 minutes already. It feels like it's only been 10 or 15.
Right. It's
I
been
love
great
talking to you, man. I guess just kind of to wrap this up, you're a financial planner, first and foremost. But I also know that you want to pour into people's lives. You want to serve people. And you don't really publicize this coaching practice.
Right.
But if someone was really interested in it, you would entertain that thought. So where can everybody find Tony Ojeda?
I'm going to give really the best two places to reach me is just my company's website, which is integrityctr.com. So Integrity Center. So CTR is the abbreviation for center. But you can also email me. And I don't mind giving out my email. It's Tony, Tony, at integrityctr.com. And if somebody was interested in learning about the coaching service that I do, We do strategic planning for companies too. We've done that for some parishes. I'm more than a bit happy to visit about that and seeing if that relationship makes sense. Because for me, as you said, I respect my time. There's only so much time I'm going to work, and I have to spend most of my time as financial advisor. But I'm very, very passionate about helping people. And if I can help somebody by coaching them, I would be more than honored to do that. If I feel like somebody could do that better than I could because maybe I'm not the right fit for that person, I'm also going to be very honest about that too.
That's awesome. So I'm going to put a shameless plug out there for you. I will have both of these as well as my first hero. I will have links to those in the show notes. I do recommend it, if nothing else, picking up this book right here, because it guides you through this one and you can write it on paper.
Yep.
But the meat and potatoes is right here. Now, I would suggest this because, like I said, it is one of the best laid out planners that I've seen. Most of them miss a critical component like mission, vision. Bleh. I can't speak today. But it captures everything from the book in this planner, which is absolutely amazing. So anyways, once again, Tony, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate you being on the podcast. It's been a long time in coming. We had to, renegotiate quite a few times to get you on here, but I'm glad we made it work out. And I hope I get a chance to talk to you the next time I'm in Lincoln, sir.
I would look forward to it. Thanks so much, Steve. I really appreciate and I'm honored to be on the podcast with you.
Appreciate it, Tony. God bless you, brother.
Thank you. You too.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the forge.